Welcome to this week's episode of the Liberty Unveiled podcast, formerly the Teshua Unveiled podcast. I am your host, Brad Hopp, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Pastor Sam Jones. Together, we are unveiling liberty one episode at a time. We'll be discussing the latest in trafficking news, insider stories from those being delivered, and studying the Founders Bible to learn how to return America to sanity and true freedom. Our sponsor for today's show is Teshua Tea Company. Visit TeshuaTea.com or DeliveranceTea.com. Hi guys, and welcome to the Liberty Unveiled podcast. I'm your host, Brad Hopp, and again, my friend Pastor Sam Jones was able to be here this week. So we're going to dive into where we were last time. But before we get into that, I wanted to cover a couple things here real quick. Talk to you about Teshua Tea Company and how does Liberty Unveiled and the Teshua Tea Company fit together and stuff. So the Liberty Unveiled podcast is really the podcasting arm of Teshua, and we talk a lot about the different issues that are facing the girls that my partner Andrew and the team rescue out of trafficking over in Asia and stuff. So he and the team rescue the young ladies from trafficking, and then they get them into our rescue and rehab facility where they're given, the skills that they need as far as how to make bracelets and coasters and how to harvest and process tea, how to budget, how to run a business, how to do different things. And really, that's kind of the goal of Teshua Tea Company, is to not only get them out of where they're at, get them the medical care and the clothing and everything that they need to step into a new life, but then also to go and give them the education that they're going to need for that new life, and so that we can send them out prepared and stuff. And as we've been talking, one of the things that a lot of groups will do is they will rescue the girls, but then a lot of times and we have this problem here in America where they a lot of times will send the girls back either to essentially the situation that got them there in the first place, or they may send them to a halfway house for a little while. But really, typically does not seem to be there, and this is not across the board. There are some very good groups in America, but by and large, there's a lack of aftercare support and re-education and educational development for girls that are caught in this and stuff. And you shared something with me before we went on camera here that I think people need to hear, that you guys are foster care parents and you've gone through some foster care classes, and I want you to share the one you were just sharing with me about the trafficking.
Yeah, so, excuse me, maybe anyway, here we go, we'll see. I was talking just fine for 2 hours. Man.
Well, and it's harvest season around here in Iowa, so we've got all the pollen and all the corn dust and the bean dust, and it's just, I've given up.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see if the corn can survive being dried out. Oh, that's terrible.
Inside joke.
Yeah. But my wife and I were foster care parents, and we just recently took a foster care training, and it was on trafficking, and we saw it was kind of interesting because we need to get some training, and you have to do so much continuing education. We're looking at it and at the list, and we see that one, and we go, oh, that's an hour and a half away. I go, yeah, that's okay. These other ones sound really boring, so we're going to go to that one. And so we went up to this one, and it was about the best foster care training that we've ever had, because it was somebody who actually works with victims of trafficking, and there was a lot of interesting things to point out, because I going into this, you never know what it's going to be. I thought, well, it's probably going to be a watch for a kid who's doing this or that, but she really talked to the culture of trafficking, which was fascinating to look at and learn. One thing that just absolutely floored me, and this is where I think Teshua is just head and shoulders above everybody else, and this is what you're talking about. Almost all of the pimps that are in there, the people who are trafficking the children and actually adults sometimes too, is really when it comes down to it. Almost all of them have been trafficked before. They themselves. And you stop and you think about this. They've had these horrible injustices done to them. They've become victims. Why would they traffic others? Well, it's because they were never truly rescued.
Right.
And that's what Teshua is really working on doing, is really rescuing these girls so that their lives are completely changed. And ultimately, the goal and the hope is that their life will be changed by Jesus Christ.
Right. And this goes back to what Andrew said on one of the episodes when he was on here. When he said hurting people hurt people. Because it's really true. And something that I want to bring up real quick here, because people sometimes are like, why do you guys not have Andrew on? Why do you not have him on camera? Why do you disguise his voice when you've had him on? He shared something with me yesterday. We were talking, and I had asked him for some pictures of, not facial pictures of the girls, but just profile or even looking over their shoulder while they're working or whatever. And he said, we have completely changed our ministry's policy on doing any pictures at all.
Really?
And he said because we had or they had a Bible school got raided, and the students and the teacher are now sitting in prison because the country that they work in has such advanced technology that one of the Bible students had taken a picture while they were at the class, and I don't know what was in the picture. It was either that they were in the class and there was something in the background that they saw that was praising Jesus or whatever, but the government actually was able to use geolocation and to see that picture, whether she shared it out there or he shared it out there or whatever, into the nether regions. They were able to use the geolocation from that picture,
right,
and to actually come in and raid the Bible school and stuff. So when we talk about the dangers of what is going on with not only the girls but with Andrew and with the Bible schools and stuff like that, it really is not a joke. It's really not a playtime.
Right.
It really is serious.
Well, in playing off of that, and this is going to sound a little bit, Alex Jonesy conspiracy theory crazy here, but I want you to keep in mind we heard this from a state-sanctioned training of foster care. Okay, this is where this is coming from. This isn't coming from Alex Jones InfoWars or something like that. The technology that's being used, even in America, for trafficking is very high. Because one of the questions is, especially in America, well, these people are adults. Why don't they just walk away?
They can't sometimes.
Yeah, they can't sometimes. And there are two reasons what the teacher told us. They said one is blackmail sometimes. And being in Iowa, she said, and this is the real at least threat. Interestingly, being in western Iowa, there was a big raid a few years ago, I guess, in western Iowa for trafficking, and about 5 years ago, I believe is when it was. And she said, one of the big threats was, these animal incinerators. But you could probably talk a little bit about the animal incinerators. You probably know about those. They say those work for people too, and they might not threaten you. They might say, and we know your child or your mother or your father or something. Yeah. And we'd love to introduce them to these incinerators. So maybe tell, because you know about incinerators a lot more than I do, I'm assuming, being more on the farm. I got a little city in me still. So
what do you want to know about them?
Well, just maybe explain just how they work.
Well, they're designed, they're like a crematorium, essentially, for animals. But,
and could a person fit in those?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a pretty legitimate threat?
Oh, yeah, that would be very legitimate because you consider the size of a cow. I mean, you could probably, if they can incinerate a cow, they could easily incinerate 2 or 3 people. And don't ever put it above the world of the mob and the mafia to do that.
Oh, right.
I mean, I have, over the years, delivering fire trucks, I like to listen to books while I'm driving down the road, and I don't know why certain books really interest me as far as in maybe it's the fact that I like seeing justice. Maybe it's the fact that I like understanding where people are and what causes them to come to the places that they are a lot of times. But I like listening to like the biographies or the autobiographies of mobsters and different stuff like that. And something that really, and I know that sounds weird, but what's really interesting to me about it is the fact that you can just go straight down the line. It's just, usually they were fatherless. Usually they were mom was around, but she was, so busy trying to provide for the family that she wasn't really able to be there and actively involved in actively teaching and training and stuff. And or she had guys coming in and out or whatever, but there's a certain pattern, a certain life cycle and a certain lifestyle that leads itself and lends itself to exactly what we're talking about. And you talked about how they oftentimes have been trafficked themselves, and it's when you start looking at it and you start really diving in. We've talked about this in previous episodes where the homosexuals, if you ask them privately, and I don't remember where, it was an article that I was reading, and this person had gone into a gay bar and was just talking to people and stuff and getting to know them and stuff, and said something about being abused or whatever, and the person goes, well, yeah, hasn't everybody?
Wow.
That they were talking to, and everybody in here has been abused. Everybody in here has been molested when they were a kid. And so that really is the pattern, and that's really why Christ said, if you hurt one of these little ones, it would be better for you if you'd had a millstone tied around your neck and tossed into the sea, because he's not playing, and when you hurt a little one, it does damage for years, and that damage can be restored. We were talking about how I'm kind of getting into more of the Judaic roots of Christianity and stuff, and one of the things
that's why your beard's so long.
Yeah. I have had some beard envy when I've been out in New York and seen some of the Jewish guys walking through the airport and just went. It was shameful. I'm like, your beard's so beautiful.
As long as you don't go up to him and tell him that. That's
yeah. But anyway, so I completely digress. People ask me, why don't you shave it or whatever? And my daughters would not. My two youngest daughters would freak out. Neither one of them have ever seen me without a beard to where they remember it. Natalie, she saw me with a beard when she was born, but it was a short beard. It was half an inch long, or whatever, and
kind of like mine.
Yeah, about your length, exactly. And she, but it wasn't shortly after she was born that I started growing it out and stuff. She wouldn't remember it. But anyway, so going back to what we were talking about, it really, it can be any age. It can be any, the technology. Oh, this is something that I wanted to hit on. I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but you were talking about the technology, and there's implantable technology today.
Well, and that's actually what I was going to say. The second thing, the reason why they don't run away is because oftentimes they have microchips in them, and that sounds absolutely crazy. Like I said, this was from a state-sanctioned training that we're learning this. And they say sometimes it's not just one, sometimes it's 6, 7, which it totally makes sense. And she goes and says, yeah, they're illegal in Iowa to go and use, but you can buy them for $25 on Amazon. So look them up.
The trackers?
Yeah, super cheap. So you think about
they implantable or what?
Yeah, implantable little kind of stuff for super cheap. Because the thing is, you think about it. So our dog has a chip in him, and not because we wanted one, but because he's from Missouri, and that's state law. You have to, the dog's born in Missouri, you have to have one. We never activated it, but I call him a little Antichrist dog. You know, that's because he's got his chip. But some days I call him that. But
It depends on if he's peeing on your shoe or not. Huh?
yeah, right, exactly. Well, he is a redhead. You know, so,
Redhead. I thought redheads stuck together.
well, just because we don't have souls, you know, that's the key. But these are, you know, these are things that, it sounds crazy, but in America, in Iowa, okay, I mean, if it can happen in Iowa, it can happen in whatever state you're in, you know, whether it's Rhode Island or California or anywhere in between. These are the things that are happening in trafficking, and it's sophisticated, and there's tons and tons and tons of money being made. One of the stories that at the training we heard was of a girl who made $30,000 in one night. And I mean, this was in Iowa too. We're talking in Iowa. All these stories were in Iowa, and I mean, it's heartbreaking. And the reason she knows she made $30,000 in one night is because they would pay her, and she'd have to go take the money to the people after each time in the night where she was frankly being raped. I mean, it's heartbreaking what these girls are going through. And the principle that I think you pulled out that Andrew had said is that hurting people hurt people. And that's why it's so important to not just merely think about the fact of, oh, we need to rescue them from the bad situation that they're in, but we need to actually rescue them from the hurt and the sin that has happened to them by them becoming a new creature and having Christ actually heal them.
Well, and this is interesting because it lends. I see a lot of stuff. So some of it you have to take with a grain of salt. Some of it you have to give credence to. A lot of it you have to give credence to, and especially with the technology, if I can talk. You know, one of the things that somebody shared a video with me. This guy goes into or he bought a couple bras from Victoria's Secrets. And he goes in and he actually, I don't remember if it was on the strap or if it was on the part that hooks together at the back. But he actually slices it open, and there's actually a tracker in there, built into the bra.
Are you serious? That's insane.
It was a little tiny microchip, about this big, and he pulls it out, and it's just a flat little microchip. And, you know, people say, you know, how can we ever get to the point where, and I used to say it, I'm like, what would have to happen where we could get to the point where you would not be able to buy or sell without, I'm like, how does that even happen?
We have a fake pandemic.
We have a fake pandemic, and
did I say that out loud?
Yeah, you did, but I agree with you, so it's okay. But, you know, there's so much where technology has advanced so quickly and so fast over the last number of years that you can get trackers for just about anything.
Right.
You know, and I don't think that this is a modern problem. Did I talk about the branding iron?
No, I don't believe you did.
Okay.
And I'm not even, I think I know where you're going with this, but...
Well, while I've been out on some of these trips and stuff over the last several weeks, things have been kind of weird for us. I've had to do more fire truck trips and stuff just because they're backlogged and stuff, and way more than I've wanted to do. But while I've been out on some of these trips, I'll turn on a video and just listen to it while I'm driving along. And I'm trying to remember, History Detective, maybe? I don't remember it's a YouTube channel, and one of the guys, or they're kind of primarily based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, is where their lab is based or whatever. And there's a group of archaeologists, and they all have different little specialties, you know. Some will be geologists, some will be archaeologists, some will be, you know, whatever. And so people would call them and say, hey, I have this relic, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck it is. is it however long or however old I think it is, or what is it? What does it have to, whatever. And this lady found what looked like a cattle brand. She had bought one of the storage units in Las Vegas. She would, when she travels around, she would buy these storage containers or storage units every once in a while. And so when she was living in Vegas, she bought one, and it had what looked like a cattle brand in it. But the brand itself was about this wide and about this tall.
It's about a couple inches wide, about an inch tall.
Yeah, and it was a rectangle. Mm-hmm. And it was all this weird script. She couldn't read it and stuff. And so she called him and she said, I have this brand. I've done some research, and I think that this brand, I don't know what it is. I think I kind of have an idea, but I'd like you guys to determine it for me. And she goes, I have a hunch based on my research that it may have a kind of a macabre use. And so they took it and they made a casting out of it so that they could make it, not damage it, but actually be able to use it to make a replica, so that they could actually use it to make a
brand.
A brand out of it. And they did this, and they found out that this brand was actually 2,000 years old. But it was all in this ancient script, calligraphy. It would be from the country that we work in, but it would be used to brand people, and it said slave.
Wow.
And so this is not a new problem.
No. Long time.
This is as ancient as mankind. But there's things that we can do, and that's the thing that I really want people to understand, is there's things that we can do. If we were watching a video at church last night, and it was from Ray Comfort. Pastor Chase had played this video, and he was doing a man on the street interview, or man on the street interviews, I should say. And one of the young ladies that he was talking to, he asked her a question. He said, would you the Germans during World War II, he was talking about the Holocaust and this different stuff, and he said the Germans would have, sometimes they would require somebody to get on the bulldozer and bury the Jews' bodies that they had just executed by the trench, and stuff, and they knew that sometimes some of these people that were in the trench were still alive, and he said, so here's my question. He said, would you hop on that if they pointed a gun at your head and said, get on that bulldozer and bury these people, or we're going to shoot you? Would you do it? And she goes, well, yeah. She goes, because it's my life, and then he asked her a couple more questions, and he got her to say something, and she said, if everybody would just stand up and do something about it.
There it is.
And he goes, but everybody is made up of individuals. And he stopped her in her tracks, and she went, oh, yeah. And she had to reevaluate some things, and it's just like with the Holocaust of abortion in America. If everybody that is a believer would really stand up and say, enough is enough, we're shutting you down, this is the end of it, we're done. We're not going to stand for it anymore. If everybody in America or in throughout the world that is against human trafficking or slavery stood up and said, this is enough, and got serious about it, we could put a stop to it, or at least put a damper on it.
Oh yeah, well, because the reality of it is, of course, as long as we're on this earth, the Bible's clear. Sin is going to be prevalent. We understand that principle. Right. Nobody's trying to sit out here and
so that we could eradicate it.
Right. But and you hear this argument all the time. At least I've heard this argument quite a bit. Of, well, should we do this? Because if we eliminate abortion in Iowa, if we get rid of it, they'll just go to another state, or they'll just use coat hangers or something like that. Well, but here's the question: where do we want the moral responsibility to be on?
To lie. Yep.
And that's the problem that you can't get. It seems very difficult to get people to see, because we live in such a flippant day and age where we don't believe that there are actual moral obligations. There are moral obligations. We are morally obliged or obligated to go and to fight evil. And of course, trafficking and slavery is an absolute evil. I think everybody would agree with that, or maybe not quite everybody, but a high percentage of people would. And so the question is, what are you going to do about it? And the one wonderful thing about Teshua here is you give a pretty good option to put up a minimum of buying some tea or coffee that is wonderful in its quality. So you're not even like out. We're just asking you, don't buy your Starbucks or your Charbucks, but actually go and buy some good stuff. But speaking of that, what kind of tea do we have?
We're having the white tea, because I know you like white tea.
I love white tea.
So I don't know if I've let this brew long enough, but we're
going to find out.
We're going to find out. Here, we'll see how I did. I am not a barista, so
I sure hope you're not a barista.
How would you say it?
A barista? I don't know. A burrito? I don't know.
I might be a burrito, but we're not sure about that.
I'm not even sure if it's really a feminine word or not, barista, because I'm not really sure what
the male,
what the language is there.
Yeah. Maybe it would be burrito. Maybe that's why they never sent.
So, what's your take? Did you brew it long enough, or is it a little weak?
I don't know. You tell me.
It's close.
It's close?
So it might be a little weak, but because it looks weak. Now, of course, white tea is going to be lighter.
Yeah, much lighter.
But there's a lot more flavor there than what my eyes thought were going to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, that's where I was like, I'm not sure. Now, that was the first steep, so, and I don't have a timer. I'm not able to time it and stuff, so, but
it's good.
We'll watch it and see how it progresses here and see what your thoughts are on it. But, we were looking up some trafficking news and stuff while you're doing this, or while we're doing this here.
You want me to pull it up, or do you want to save that for next time?
We might, but I wanted you to come back to something you said earlier about the.
He's expecting you to remember what I said.
Yeah, about the the training, and they were talking about the youngest and the oldest, and the age gaps and stuff, and I want people to understand that this problem is not limited to a certain age bracket. We work with Teshua right now because we're young enough and stuff. We are kind of focused in on a certain age bracket, but I want people to understand that this is bigger than what they may realize.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just heartbreaking. And I actually, now thinking about it, I told you the wrong age, the young age, but it makes it worse.
Okay.
The trainer told us that the youngest person that they'd rescued was 3 months old. And the oldest was 72 years old. That pretty much encompasses everything, right? 3 months to 72 years. And I don't even know what to say about that.
No.
I mean, there's just not words to talk about the wickedness that's in there. And it's what was interesting, because another story that she told, because it's not just of ages, but also of, especially in America, financial demographics. There was one that she was telling of two daughters of, I don't remember if they're dentists or doctors, but a profession that is well off. And basically the family was out for the day, or for the weekend, and they left their kids with somebody they trusted to watch. And basically they pretended like they told these young impressionable girls that they if they didn't do this, it would ruin their parents. Like they wouldn't be able to, they held their parents over their head, they wouldn't be able to see their parents again, something to that effect, or whatnot. And then after they did it once, then as the children progressed, because they're in this for years, then they told the children, well, if you don't do it, then we'll tell people what you're doing, and it's going to ruin the reputation of your parents and ruin your parents' business. And so, I mean, it's not even just 3 months to 72 years old, but it's also financially stable families to non-financially stable families. And in some of the people trafficking stories have been wives who then have been blackmailed into this kind of a thing and whatnot. And of course, some are just sold by their families too. And it's sick, it's disgusting, it's abominable, but it's also heartbreaking at the same time. And especially when you realize that a lot of these people, especially the ones that have been actually sold, they're going to be taken, and a lot of times they end up becoming the pimps or the distributors or whatnot.
And it's this is why this is such a critical issue. And and I want to say that I think that the reason a lot of us don't want to look at it is because there's something in us that says, some of the stats and some of the numbers and things that I've seen over time are that it's not just the guys that are visiting the John, it's not just the Johns that are visiting the hookers and stuff. And it's that sometimes the girls are not even necessarily being trafficked that way. They may be trafficked into pornography. They may be trafficked into...
Well, I think that's something you're saying. Why do sometimes people don't rise up? Well, there are so many... I'm trying to think of the statistics. Can't recall them to my mind. But there are so many people in the United States and around the world who are caught into pornography. And the problem with that is it's really hard to call out a sexual sin in somebody else's life when you got a sexual sin in your life. But then also, the reality of it is, the hard truth, if you watch pornography, you are enabling sex trafficking.
Yeah.
You are a supporter of sex trafficking.
You're giving them your dollars. And
whether it's through advertisement or literally the dollars, too. Because I understand some people, I've heard this argument, well, it's a free porn site. Well, it's not really free.
Somebody's paying for it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not cheap to run a website. I don't care what kind of website it is.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. It's not easy. It's not whatever. It costs. And so they're paying for it somehow. And the best way to trap a dog is to give him a free steak.
Yeah.
But then you throw another steak out there the next day, and throw another steak out there the next day, and pretty soon you hardly even have to throw much of a steak out there at all, and you could release it with arsenic. It's done. It's that slippery. Oh, it's free. It's free. Well, yeah.
Just this morning, while I was on my way over here, I was listening to A.W. Tozer. I was also listening to Christmas music. But
That's my man.
Yeah, but are you Christmas music all year round kind of guy?
No, yeah. I'll end up singing. I don't remember which one it is, but I'm singing in like July or June or April or.
One time I was driving down the street, and it was middle of summer. I mean, July. I had my windows rolled down, and I was just blaring "Oh Holy Night," and I couldn't figure out why the people who pulled up next to me were just looking at me like I had a third eyeball. And then I realized, oh yeah,
my Christmas music.
Yeah. But anyway, I was listening to A.W. Tozer, and he made mention of the most dangerous poison isn't a cup that's 100% poison, but it's a cup that's 1% poison, because you're much more likely to drink it, and it's going to kill you in a slower, painful way.
And this is why Proverbs talks about watch out for, and it goes through this whole litany of the adulterous woman and the it's a slippery slope. It's meant to deceive, and it's meant to entrap and ensnare, and
And destroy.
And destroy.
It talks about in Proverbs that the adulterous woman or the strange woman, depending on the version you're looking at, she's seeking to whom she may destroy. And we're not, when I say this here in the book of Proverbs, isn't putting the moral fault on the trafficked girls. I want to say that's not what we're trying to say here.
Absolutely not. Right.
Because the point is more than just actually the person, the lady. Although there are ladies who are out there like that. No doubt.
Right.
The bigger point is the actual sexual sin itself is what's doing the destroying.
Right.
Excellent tea, by the way.
Thank you.
Very good.
So it's getting stronger as we go along here. You know, one of the reasons that we want to call this out, and I want people to understand something, you know, as much as this is something that I really think people need to understand, and I think people really need to understand about the gospel. They really need to understand about Christ. They really need to understand about God. Is that while we were yet sinners, while these guys were still pimping, it was then that Christ died for us.
That's right.
Now, that's not to make light of the sin.
No.
That's not at all to make light of the sin. But what that's to say is that while I was depraved and gross and yucky and God didn't want to have anything to do with me, couldn't have anything to do with me in my state that I was in, because I was unrepentant and I was living my own way and I was doing, you know, all the sins that I could possibly think of. It was then that Christ still gave up his life for me and still died for me. And this goes back to the Judaic roots, you know, that we were talking about. It was the Jews were the ones he was dying for, but it was, and he was a Jew, but yet they were the ones putting him on the cross, and yet he still looked down and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it was while they were still in that state that he was able to look at them and say, forgive them and restore them, but based on their repentance.
Well,
you know.
Well, here's an interesting thought. Why was mankind created?
To fellowship with God.
Absolutely. And so we think about this. It's our fellowship with God that's been broken. You know, in today's Christianity, we have a cheap commercialized Christianity where we put up a good commercial where we say, Jesus came just to save us from our sin, which is true. That's a true statement. But then we go and we apply it this way. Jesus came just to save me from hell. To prepare me to die, is how Pastor Carey puts it. That's not actually what the gospel is about.
Right.
Now, Jesus does that. But really, he does it so that we could be like him, so that we can have that fellowship. It's not just that Jesus died for our justification, but it's also that he died for our sanctification, so that we could become more like Christ. And to tie this into what you're saying and getting at here, that Jesus died, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's not just that Jesus died so that they could be saved, and then that they could just, feel miserable about themselves and never do anything with their life. No, Jesus died so that they can become a radically new person and become like Christ. And you know, some of the greatest rescuers were once brothel owners, right?
Because they've learned to see, and this is the thing that we have to get people to understand, is that I may need to put some more water in there for you.
That's kind of empty there.
Yeah. You know, when we I lost my train of thought. Maybe 3,000 miles last week has something to do with it. You know, when take people and we don't share the law with them, we can't get them truly saved. But when we take them to the law and we allow them, we really need people to understand. The Christian church has gotten so far to the point where we look at the law as being bad. That's really kind of like taking and putting a mirror up in front of my face and saying, the mirror is bad,
Right.
because I'm ugly.
And of course, there are a few verses that you can pull out of context and say, "Oh, look, the law looks bad." But those verses, what they're getting at, especially you think of in the book of Galatians and Romans chapter 6, when you look at that, it's saying here that in the sense of the law doesn't save us. Oswald Chambers said this, and I think this plays right into it. He said, "The chief end of man is not happiness but holiness." And that's true. God wants us to be holy. He said, "Be ye holy, for I am holy." By the way, he said that in the law. And then he repeats it in Peter, okay?
Right.
The question is, how do we define holiness? By what standard? It's by the standard of the law. And so when we're using the law lawfully, it's wonderful. If you're using the law to get to heaven, well, you're going to fall short.
Right.
But that's not what we're talking about. So I want to make sure that we understand that. We're not talking about works-based salvation. We're
Right.
far from it.
Right. Well, and I want to give people an analogy here on something that, as we're talking about this, there's an analogy that I'm kind of seeing here, and I'm going to go back to it. It was like the mirror. If I wake up in the morning and I got bedhead and whatever, and
Talking about me.
before I cut my hair, my bedhead used to be like all over the place. And the kids, in fact, I have some pictures. The kids would laugh at me because they're like, "Dad, your hair's all over." But when looking in the mirror is like looking at the law. And if I look at the law and I can see, oh, I got bedhead, and I can get some water and I can smooth things over and I can look at the mirror and I'm making some adjustments and I can brush out the beard and I can make some adjustments and, whatever.
You probably do more combing on your beard than you do your hair.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the beard gets treated much better. The beard gets beard butter, and yeah, it's pampered. I digress. Anyway, but I can make changes. The mirror allows me to see clearly, so that I can make changes. The law allows me to see clearly my internal state so that I can make changes. Because if I don't know what the law says, I can't change to it. Right. The law is not bad. A mirror is not bad. A mirror is a way of being able to look at something and look at myself and go, I'm ugly in this scenario. I need to do something to rectify this problem. And I can make changes.
The mirror looked back and it told me there was nothing I could do. And when I said that, I said ugly's just ugly. No. No, you're making a perfect illustration. Perfect illustration.
Because, but that's the thing. When we look at the law and we can see our absolute depravity, and the Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So that all means all. That leaves nobody out.
That's all means, right?
Yeah. And so that means that Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, the guys that were brothel owners, it doesn't matter how wicked and awful and how much of an absolute heathen reprobate pond scum somebody has been. When they look at the law and they see their reflection and they go, I need to change. I need to make adjustments here. And I need to get the water from the sink and put it on my hair and smooth it out. And I need to see what I've done and I need to repent of it. That repenting of it is looking in the mirror and it's getting the water and it's beginning to clean up. The repentance is the beginning to change the problem, change what I've been doing so my hair isn't all over the place. I mean, I'm changing it. I'm cleaning it up. I'm smoothing out things. I'm making changes. I'm making adjustments. If I was a woman, I'd be putting on makeup. I'd be, doing all the things that women have to do and spend an hour in the bathroom. I can't say that about my wife because she doesn't have to and doesn't. But all the changes, all the things, that only comes through repentance. That's looking in the law and not turning away, not looking in the mirror and then walking back out the bathroom door.
Right.
The repentance is looking in the mirror and doing something about it.
Absolutely. And that's what the book of James talks about. We have to be not just hearers, but doers of the word also. And it's so amazing when we look at this, because it also says in Hebrews 7 that he can save to the uttermost. So that the point that you're making, the wickedest and most vile people, the Apostle Paul said, sinners among whom he was chief. Jesus came to save sinners among whom he was chief. What an incredible thing. And this is what Teshua is all about. It's about deliverance, right? Deliverancetea.com. And you need to go there. You need to order this white tea for sure, because it's really good. See, we worked that in. but no, in all seriousness, though, this is something that is delivering people. And I mean, what an incredible thing.
And so I want to come back to this for just a second on the tea here. And
Okay.
What kind of flavor profiles are you noticing? As we've kind of brewed it a little bit longer, I've noticed more of like a fruity note to it.
Yeah, a little bit of a fruity note, a little bit of the sweeter tones kind of coming out. But the nice thing, so this is the thing I love about white tea. So I drink coffee, and I know if you drink high quality coffee, it doesn't taste as dirty, But the old joke is, why'd your coffee taste like dirt? Well, it was ground just a minute ago.
Right.
That's terrible, right? But a black tea almost has a little bit of that I don't know how to say it other than saying grittiness to it. Green tea has has less, significantly less, but a little bit. White tea is just so clean tasting and smooth. And I just that's what I love about white tea. And then it really does allow those whether it's honey tones, the 500-year-old tea tree that you guys have, that really brings out honey tones. I mean, that's like you don't need to put honey in it, because you're just like, if you like to put honey in your tea, and it's not overly sweet if you don't like sweet tea, so don't worry about that. But it's like you're tasting it, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I told you about my trips down south and
And drinking Kool-Aid that they claimed was tea.
Oh, awful. I'm like, no, you guys are reprobates. No, that's heathen. I mean, you guys you have 1 pound of tea and 15 pounds of sugar. No.
What a good ratio.
Gross. Yuck. That's syrup. No.
Yeah, I mean, if you go down south and you run out of syrup, you can put the tea over your pancakes. No difference.
He would know the difference. Oh my goodness. No, I can't do it. But, really this really comes back to where we were talking a minute ago. We have seen through this ministry, we have seen brothel owners that when they met Christ, it wasn't just step one foot in the door and maybe kind of show up on Sunday. It was a radical transformation, because they were brought to the law and they saw their need for that repentance. They saw their depravity, and I'm going to clarify what I'm about to say. In I'm not becoming Jewish, but I have been.
He did buy a dreidel.
I did not buy, not yet. But I did get my Messianic prayer shawl, and the thing that is really intriguing to me about it is because God would write the Ten Commandments, or He wrote or had the Jews take and knot the tassels on their prayer shawls in such a way that there were 613 knots, representing the 613 laws of the Old Testament.
Right.
But we were talking about this on our way over here earlier this morning, and really everybody says, well, Jesus did away with the law. No, he didn't do away with the law. He summarized the law. And there's a point in the New Testament where Jesus says, all of the law and the prophets can hang on these two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And the second is like unto it also, love your neighbor as yourself.
That's right.
That is the Cliff Notes version of the 613 laws in the Old Testament.
Right. And of course, the key is the love that it's talking about isn't self-defined. It's not subjective.
Right.
The subjects aren't the ones defining it. It's objective. It is real. It is solid. It is set in stone. And God is literally set in stone, literally, in the Ten Commandments. And He delivered it to us, and we have these commandments and the law. And the thing is that we go and we look at this because when you stand up for something that is obviously in God's standard, and you have people come up and say, well, that's not loving. And you go, yeah, it is. No, it's not. Well, 2 John 6 tells us, well, let me look it up here, because I was sitting here going, instead of letting me slaughter the quotation here, let me just read it, right? I got a Bible sitting right in front of me. 2 John 6, it says this, if I can find it. Keep going to 3 John. Here we go. It says this, and this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. Jesus said in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments.
Well, okay.
You can't define love outside of God's commands.
Right. So let's bring this home for people. So Thomas comes up to you and you tell him to go do something. And let's say he was a little bit older. Okay.
He's getting to that age, though.
He's getting to that age.
He's getting there.
But he comes up to you and you tell him to go do something. And Lester says, no. I'm not going to do it. And this becomes a habit where you tell him to go do something and he defies you and says, no, I'm not going to do that. And he continues to do this. What would you, as a father, say about his love towards you?
It'd be lacking.
It'd be lacking. Why? Is there evidence to prove it?
Right.
There's evidence to show that he doesn't love you. What's the evidence? That he's not willing to do what you tell him to do.
Absolutely.
If I love somebody, I'm going to do what they ask me to do. Why? Not because, brother, you're putting me under the law. No, I do it because I care about you. You told me to do something. You asked me to do something. It wasn't something that was going to hurt me. It wasn't something that was going to violate a godly conscience. It's something that is, it's going to be, even if it did, let's say it did hurt me. Let's say, because Christ said not to deny his name. Even to the point of dying on the cross.
Right. Well, and
it still shows him that I love him because I'm willing to do what he says, even though...
Well, greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends. And one thing we need to remember about God's laws, and this is so important. When about a year ago, I was teaching through Psalm 119, and really paying attention to what it's saying, the statutes, the judgments, the commands, the laws, all these kind of things. When it's talking about this, and really one thing that's huge to look at is that the law is not there to hinder our life. The law is there to help our life, because if we walk in accordance to what God says, our life is better. It's going to go better for you and your neighbor if you don't steal from them. It's going to go better for you and your marriage if you don't commit adultery. It's going to go better for you and whatever it might be if you go and you obey God's laws. God's laws aren't there to hinder us from fun, but they're there to help us You want to live your best life now, to steal that famous book, obey God.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Well, and what is as we were talking about this, I'm reminded of there's a prayer that the Jewish people pray every morning. It's called the Shema. It's Shema, and the Shema is actually from Deuteronomy, and the first part of it is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is God, the Lord is one. But then it goes on and it starts quoting Deuteronomy 6, and it talks about, take the laws and write them, bind them to your forehead, bind them to your wrist, make them as frontlets before your eyes, and so that they're a constant reminder. But he says, talk with them, with your children, as you walk along the way, as you're sitting in your house, as you leave your house, talk about them. And the thing is that if we keep those as a constant reminder of before ourselves, there's something that he says he'll do. He says, I'll give you the early and the latter rain. I will pour out blessings upon you. I will bless you in the land that you go. You will gather in your new grain and your new wine. Right. You will have abundance because you've made the Lord your God first priority. If we will just simply do his word and obey his word, then he says, I will bless you because you're following me.
Absolutely.
I want to bless my children when they obey me.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it's so funny because so many times of those obeyings, right, are things that are for the better. Just recently, and one thing I realize is, fatherhood gives you a whole lot of examples, right? Mm-hmm. It's a living illustration.
It really is.
We're over at my parents' house, and I've got my son. He's just about 2. In December he'll be 2, and there's a fan going. It's a metal fan. It's one of those it'd chop your fingers off kind of a fan.
Oh, one of those old school ones.
Yeah, it's a big, strong, powerful one too, and okay. And they've got it going and whatnot. And my son loves fans. I don't know what it is. He's going to be 100 times more of a mechanic than I ever could be.
But you can do your best robot voice in front of a fan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were down doing that. But I kept telling him, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. But every time he'd reach and pull his hand away, don't touch it. Well, after a little while, he got really, really, really wanting to touch it. Of course, I caught him, pulled his hand back. He starts to throw a little bit of a fit. Mm-hmm. Now, how silly is that? If he touches that fan, is it going to go well for him?
Nope.
Or is it not going to go well for him? It's not going to go well for him, but yet here he is going, why are you putting this rule in front of me, mm-hmm. this law in front of me, mm-hmm. for because your own protection?
Mm-hmm. This is interesting because last night, whole week's been a blur, but it was last night. We had gotten home from church and we were Megan had made. We've started getting to the point where we actually will. For many years actually, we would come home on Sunday and try to scrounge around and try to find something for lunch, and it's 2:00 before we're eating, because we don't get out till 12:30 usually.
Long-winded preachers, they're the worst.
And they preach forever. I love our pastor.
I preached for 45 minutes yesterday, and it was a short sermon.
But I have never complained about getting out of church late. My stomach might be yelling, but I don't care. Shut up and be quiet. We're hearing the word. And but anyway, so what we've started doing is we've started putting a roast in the crock pot, and just a couple of weeks ago I'm like, you know what, this is stupid. We need to be better prepared for Sunday for lunchtime. You know what, we're going to start buying a roast every week. Once a week we're going to buy a roast. We're going to have it ready for Saturday for the crock pot. Get the parsnips, get the carrots, get the onions, get the potatoes, and put them all in there, and have it ready to go. Sunday morning we can put it on and we can go to church and it'll be ready when we come home. We're prepared for the day. We're ready for the day. It's even more of a way of honoring the Sabbath and just honoring that time of rest that God wants us to have. And
That's right.
And last night we got home from church and it had been on Keep Warm all afternoon or whatever, and I was just sitting there, and I mean I had 3,000 miles this week, and I was tired. Mm-hmm. And Megan was asking me to take it down, and I was going to. I was just sitting there for a minute, and I'm like, and all of a sudden Harrison comes out of his room, and he picks it up and takes it and goes away. Down the stairs he went. And I'm like, you didn't have to do that. I was going to get there. I was just, sitting here for a minute. But he did it because he loves me.
That's right.
I didn't ask him to. It wasn't...
you weren't going to beat him if he didn't.
No, it was just... But he did it out of an act of he did it out of an act of love. It wasn't, and Christ talks about this. He says, obedience is better than sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And there's times where, obedience is really the bare minimum.
Right.
There's things that I should do just because I love him and I care about him and I want to show him that I love him. It's not that I have to do it.
Right.
And that's the thing is we're doing this and we're sharing the gospel with people that really, by all rights, some of them, like the brothel owners, really don't, by man's standard, don't deserve it.
Right. No, not at all. And that's the incredible thing to go and to look at this. They're rescuing, and there's stories of brothel owners getting saved. Not just these girls getting saved, but brothel owners getting saved. And they're getting rescued from their sin too. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that the greatest name for this podcast, for the company, Teshua, or ministry, I should say, more than company. Mm-hmm. But it's deliverance. Mm-hmm. It's deliverance. Mm-hmm. And the greatest deliverance that you can have is from sin. Right. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And I don't know why we hit on this so hard today, but...
It wasn't our plan at all.
It really wasn't. But I really feel like people need to understand that the law is not there...
Can I read a scripture that talks about what the laws for? I guess you can keep describing it while I look it up here. Because the one problem I will say about the Founders Bible, it's the problem with the Dake Bible too. Really hard to find stuff in because there's so many notes.
Yeah, it is. The law is there for our protection and it's there for our blessing. And if we look at the law as being wicked and evil, and just be a killjoy, we're looking at it wrong.
In the wrong chapter. There we go. I'm trying to think here what the other verse I'm looking at. I found one that I know I want here, and the other one is
while he's looking this up, I'm gonna we're gonna get ready to wrap up the show, but I want him to finish these scriptures first and stuff. And so please stop by teshuatea.com, TESHUAHTEA.com, or deliverance.com. Stop by and check out the products, pick up some products, because the products are already purchased from the girls, and the more products we sell, the more we're able to buy products from them. We're actually trying to put together another order. It won't be a huge order, but about $1,000. But that's $1,000 that's going back into their pockets, and and is money that they're able to save up and for the days that they move out and so on and so forth. So stop by teshuatea.com and pick up some of the products. We're running low on some of the tea kettles. I have some of the, I didn't bring one out here, but we have some of the little clay teapots, and a lot of those are single, they're one-offs. In other words, they're one of a kinds, and you're not going to be able to pick them up anywhere else and stuff. And so once they're gone, they're gone. So if you're interested in one of them, pick it up. I think I have them priced at like $30 or something. They're not outrageous. We have these tea kettles available, and we have a limited number of some of the bracelets. Some of the bracelets were down to like 70 or whatever. So if you want one, pick it up. They're $15, $25 or $15 to $25. Christmas is coming up. We have, birthdays for people. Buy these for gifts for people, and you can share the story with them and say, hey, you know what? I care about you enough, and I care about these girls enough that I got you this bracelet, and yet you can feel good that knowing that your birthday present went to do some good for somebody else too at the same time. So it's a double whammy. You get blessed, and somebody else was provided for and helped too, and stuff. So that's the thing I really want people to understand is, it really can be a double blessing. So stop by Teshua Tea Company and check out the products, and please like and subscribe and share the podcast with your friends. I haven't checked to check and see what the numbers are now, but we're over, I think, closer to 500 downloads and stuff. I'm not sure, but so like I said, please like and subscribe and share and help us get the word out about the podcast, because Pastor Sam drives 3 hours every time just to come over here, and 3 hours home. So we work hard to put out the podcast, and we work hard to create good content for you. And
I think we are the biggest, tea podcast in the state of Iowa.
Might be the only one, but
I don't even know that. Romans chapter 3.
There you go.
It says in verse 19 and then also 31, it says, now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. It convicts people. And in verse 31 here, it says, do we nullify the law through faith? May it never be. On the contrary, we establish the law. People aren't convicted of their sin. They don't get to see the true picture, as what Brad brought out through the mirror, without the law of God. Preach the law.
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking about, as you were saying that, the modern Christian church is instead of putting a mirror up in front of people, they're putting a glass window up in front of people.
Or a circus mirror, one of the two.
Yeah, so you can't see accurately.
Right.
You can't see. I mean, I can kind of sort of see a little bit in a if I'm standing at the right angle or whatever in a window, but I really can't see. I'm not going to see nearly as clear as if I have the whole law, that silver backing on the piece of glass, same piece of glass, but one has a silver backing on it, one doesn't, and the silver backing being the word, the law, that allows me to reflect my image and to see. Where if I take that glass and I strip off the silver lining, I've got the glass window and I can't see myself now to make the corrections and the changes, and so many churches are doing that where they're stripping off the silver. And you think about the more precious than gold and more precious than rubies and silver, and all that is His word, and His law is more precious than that. It's a more precious backing to that glass that allows my reflection to be seen so I can make the changes that I need.
Absolutely.
So anyway, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys are blessed and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. You've been listening to the Liberty Unveiled podcast, setting captives free one episode at a time. The Liberty Unveiled podcast is a part of the Unresolved Podcast Network and has been brought to you by Teshua Tea Company, TESHUAHTEA.com or DeliveranceTea.com.